Great. Well, thanks a lot for coming to my session. I'm going to be talking about the 5 stages of emergent collaboration. But first, a little bit of background. So I was born in Melbourne, Australia, and my grandmother, when I was younger, she always used to try to teach me how to play chess. Probably because I was one of those troubled kids, always causing mischief. So she taught me how to play chess, and then I became very passionate about it. I started playing a lot of chess. And it's why we named the company what it is today. And curious, anybody here play chess or know how to play chess? Wow, a lot of you. Okay, so quick, fun chess question for you. Within the first 4 moves of a chess game, how many possible moves or total combinations of moves are there? Just yell them out, whatever you think. Within the first 4 moves for both players, how many possible move combinations are there? How many do you think? How many? 1,500. 115,000. Remember, we're just talking about the first 4 moves. Anybody else? 10,000. 1,000,000. Nobody was even close. So within the first 4 moves of a chess game, there are close to 400 billion, with a B, possible variations of moves that you can make. In fact, there are more possible chess moves than there are seconds that have elapsed since the Big Bang. There are more possible chess moves than there are atoms in the entire universe. So chess is the ultimate puzzle. It's why I'm so fascinated by it, because there are so many combinations and permutations and things that can affect a chess game. And it's actually also one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about collaboration, because I think collaboration is very much in the same vein, right? Different organizations, different departments, different tools, different people, everyone's trying to do different things. And it's why I've become so fascinated with collaboration, because I feel that it very much relates to chess, which is something that I'm so passionate about. Now, in the collaboration space, I've become fascinated with a couple problems. And these are some of them. There are many. So why is it that 67% of Americans are not engaged with the work that they do? Why is it that work is one of the leading causes of stress today? Why is it that almost 50% of employers think that their employees are burned out at work? And why is it that 35% of us check email on our devices oftentimes while we're still in bed, before we even got dressed and had breakfast? Why is that happening? And it's funny because we hear a lot of people talk about engagement, right? Especially on the vendor side. Vendors are always talking about engagement. And typically, a lot of people look at engagement as activity that happens on a platform, right? Our employees are engaged because they're posting comments or they're sharing ideas. I think it's actually the backwards way to look at it. I think we've spent a lot of time confusing engagement with activity, right? Because it's not just because an employee does things on a social network doesn't make them engaged, it makes them active. The fact that an employee is engaged is what makes them participate in those activities, right? So it's a little bit, focusing on what makes an employee engaged instead of focusing on the outcomes of them, contributing to these various platforms. So these are some of the fascinating things that I found in the workplace. And even the speaker before me was saying that we're trying to make work suck less. That is so sad, right? That we even have to use the words suck and work in the same sentence. We're trying to make work suck less. When did work become so miserable, and why did we have to hate it so much to make it suck less? It's sad because we spend so much of our time at work, right? We don't want to look like this crazy guy, right? We don't want our enterprises to be filled with a bunch of people that look like this sitting at their desks. And these are some of the issues that we see within the enterprise, right? Difficult to build trust within companies, hard to find the right information, hard to find the right people to connect with. We work long hours. We don't get enough time to spend at home with families. We take our work home with us. And there are a lack of strategic resources to help organizations really move collaboration to the next step. And that's part of what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So I think it's time for organizations to make a choice, right? We're at a very exciting but also a little bit of a scary time in the world. It's exciting because we all have all these really cool technologies and strategies that are helping organizations become more collaborative, right? It's awesome now that I can deploy something like a SharePoint or Yammer or Jive or any one of these platforms to connect my employees together. That's really, really cool. But what's really scary is that we're starting to assume that connectivity means availability, right? We're starting to assume that just because somebody's always connected means they're always available. And that's scary to me, right? It's scary because if we start to connect all of our employees within the organization, when do we have personal time? When do we have work time, right? We need to have these sort of boundaries. And it's sort of freaky when you think about it, that we're spending 35% of us are checking email while we're still, before we even got dressed, right? When did that happen? So I believe that collaboration can make the world a better place. And I know we've talked a lot about how collaboration can impact organizations, improve productivity, make employees more engaged at work. I think if we focus on the issues of collaboration within the workplace, we're selling ourselves short. I think that's only half of the picture. I think the bigger, more interesting picture is how collaboration can impact employees outside of work. So think about the previous slide where I showed, that crazy angry guy and, a lot of the issues that we have in the enterprise. Think about what organizations would look like if employees had an easier time getting their job done, if they were able to trust their coworkers, if they were able to spend less time searching for information and more time actually getting their jobs done, if they were passionate about the work that they were doing. What would organizations look like? Right? What would your organization look like? And I have this weird, crazy belief that if we can make our employees more passionate and more connected and more engaged at work, then they're going to take a lot of this home with them after work, right? Less arguments at home. They're going to have more time to spend with their families. They're going to be less stressed out at home. This is part of what I think the really, really interesting thing of collaboration is not just what happens to employees at work, but how we can affect the lives of the employees outside of work. And that's fundamentally why I believe collaboration can make the world a better place. Now, I know that a lot of people talk about collaboration, engagement, why it's important, why it's great, what the business value is, what the benefits are. But that's not enough to actually get organizations to do things. It's out of necessity that I've sort of spent the last few years trying to focus on the strategic and tactical aspects that make collaboration work. Because it's not enough to go at a board meeting and sit down with executives and say, collaboration's great, your employees are going to love you, everything's going to be happy, woohoo. Right? Nobody's going to buy into that. Right? What's missing are the strategic and tactical resources to help organizations actually understand how to do these things. Right? How do I pick the right vendor? How do I mitigate risk? How do I get employees to use these tools? How do I actually make these things happen? That's a big part of what we're not seeing enough of today. And it's out of necessity that, as Peggy mentioned, the book that's coming out beginning of July of this year is sort of the first comprehensive strategy guide to making collaboration in the enterprise work. And it's precisely for this reason, because I'm so passionate about being able to affect the lives of employees, not just at work, but outside of work. But I also understand that it's not enough to just talk about it. We need to actually guide organizations on how to do it. So where does collaboration fit with any of this? There are tons and tons of stats on collaboration and the impact that it has on the enterprise. In fact, if you just Google collaboration statistics or impact of collaboration on the enterprise, you'll find tons of really cool and interesting stats from HR, from leadership, from management, from all sorts of departments. These are just some of the stats that I found were particularly interesting. 67% of workers believe that there are colleagues who can help them do their jobs better. 67%. I mean, it's almost funny how big that number is. Frost & Sullivan did a really interesting report. They did one in 2006 and 2009. And if anybody's interested in it, just Google Frost & Sullivan Collaboration Report. They're free. I don't even know if you need to register for them. You'll easily be able to see them. But they found that collaboration has a 36% impact on overall business performance. 36%. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. They compared that against a couple other variables, market turbulence and a couple other factors. And by far, collaboration, the greatest impact on business performance. And they also looked at it across different departments, HR, innovation, marketing, et cetera. Every department, collaboration was on top. Karthik, I don't know if any of you saw his session earlier today, actually highlighted this next statistic that 30% or more of an information worker's time is spent searching for information. Just to give you some perspective, that's over 1 day a week where we are just sitting, not actually working, but just looking for something. And I find this particularly fascinating because, why is it now that we can find out more about our ex-girlfriends from 10 years ago than we can find out about our coworkers that work with us? Right? Why is that? Why is it so easy for me to go to Google to find information, to find a document, to share something with a friend or family member? And why is it so hard for us to do this within the enterprise? Right? They're really cool and fascinating types of problems that I think are really fun to explore. Why is all this happening? And the next stat is higher levels of engagement strongly correlated to higher levels of innovation. And that was something that was put out by Gallup. So there are only 3 things that I want to cover, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the very end. The 3 things are an adaptive collaboration framework, overview of 5 different types of organizations, and a brief look at a maturity model. A lot of these things, actually, I haven't shared publicly anywhere yet. They're going to be in the book in extreme detail, but you guys are actually the first people to see a lot of these types of concepts and models and visuals. Nobody else has seen them before. So a little bit about me. I'm the principal of a company called Chess Media Group. We work with organizations on the management, consulting, and strategy side of collaboration. The book is called The Collaborative Organization, due out end of June, beginning of July. And if you go to the URL Collaborative Organization, you can see more about it and ask to get notified when it comes out. I blog and talk a lot about collaboration and strategy at Social Business Advisor, on Twitter @JacobM, and as you can tell from the picture, I like camels. Actually, I like to travel. That's just a fun picture that I like. So why emergent collaboration? Social business, social CRM, social media, social enterprise, social collaboration, tons of terms, right? When I was writing the book, it was actually very difficult for me to figure out what do I want to refer this as? What is this? I settled on emergent collaboration for a couple of reasons. Mainly because it just made sense. I mean, emergent is the act of something becoming visible or noticed. Collaboration is working with someone to create something or to achieve a goal. Put those 2 together, you get new ways of working with people to create something or achieve a goal. So for me, emergent collaboration just made sense, and that's what I stuck with. So this is one of the key things that I wanted to cover, the adaptive emergent collaboration framework. Now, there's a lot more behind this image than unfortunately I could show on the slide. But basically what this is every organization interested in making collaboration work within their enterprise needs to consider these 5 things. Every single company. Goals and objectives, culture, process, technology, governance. Now within these spheres, there are little elements in there as well. For example, within culture, we have openness and leadership and evangelists and whatnot. But every organization needs to take these things into consideration when trying to make collaboration successful within their company. Every single one. Now, the reason why this framework is adaptive is because it doesn't tell you you have to do this first, then that, then this, then that. Right? We're not putting together IKEA furniture. We're not baking a cake. Every organization is different. Collaboration comes from different departments and different companies. In some companies, it comes from the top down, others from the bottom up, some from the middle. So it's hard to tell organizations to follow a step-by-step process when we have so many variables that come into play. It's sort of like a chess game, right? You can't tell every player to follow the same sort of step-by-step approach when your opponent's going to be doing something different every time. So what makes this adaptive, and the part of this that I'm not able to show here, is that there's a model that goes behind this that allows organizations to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. So every organization is going to have different strengths and weaknesses. For example, if you look at process, you might be very strong in the process area, yet weak in the organizational culture area. You might be strong at 3 of these out of the 5 areas. Your competitor might be strong in 4 out of the 5 areas. So it's adaptive, and it allows organizations to sort of choose where their strengths and weaknesses are and then sort of move down that road. Now, this is sort of a very high-level snapshot of part of what the model behind that would look like. But the collaborative assessment, if you notice on top, those are sort of those 5 spheres, those 5 elements that I mentioned earlier. What it allows you to do is see, again, where your strengths and where your weaknesses are. So for example, governance. If you're at the beginning stages, you don't have policies in place, no guidelines, no best practices shared, et cetera. And you sort of move to stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5 as these things start to build up. And a collaborative assessment, even if it's a simple high-level one, is very valuable because it allows your organizations to see where you are, where your strengths and weaknesses are, and what you need to work on. Right? And this is a big part of the how-to that we're not seeing enough of in the collaboration space. And it's a big reason of why I've been spending so much time trying to build and put together this sort of a collaborative maturity model. So the important thing with all of this is I try not to be prescriptive. The key is to be descriptive. And what I mean by that is that whatever I show here, whatever I talk about, whether it's on the blog, in the book, et cetera, the point of this is for organizations to take it and to adapt it and make it their own. Right? I don't fully expect every organization to look at this and say, oh, we have to follow that exact same thing. Not at all. Right? It's important for me to be as descriptive as possible so that you guys can take the information and adapt it and make it your own. That's part of what's going to make collaboration successful within the enterprise. So there are 5 types of organizations. Now that I'm looking at the font, it does look to be a little small, so let me walk you through them. So the 5 types of organizations, starting at the top, unaware, exploratory, defined, adoptive, and adaptive. And on the next slide, you'll see how that looks in a maturity model. Unaware organizations here basically haven't thought of much, right? They're unaware. They don't really know what they don't know. There might be some casual exploration, but they're still roughly out in the middle of nowhere. Organizations that are in the exploratory phase have more formalized discovery. Typically, organizations in this stage are between 1 to 3 months. They start to explore various vendors, start to do basic planning, might start getting their teams together, starting to have discussions around this. Then we have defined organizations. Defined organizations have actually really thought about all these various elements. They have formal strategies developed. They're starting to move forward on a lot of these things. I found that a lot of organizations are typically in this phase for 1 to 3 months. It could be longer. I've seen organizations in this phase for 9, 10, 11, 12 months. But typically, I'd say 1 to 3 months is how long it takes organizations to go through and define what all these areas look like. Then we have adoptive organizations. This is the actual implementation phase, rolling these things out, making it work, right? Deploying the tools, deploying the features, encouraging our employees to use these tools. And then finally, we have the adaptive organization. This is sort of the never-ending state for the enterprise. The adaptive organization is one that constantly focuses on iteration and improvement, development, incorporating employee feedback, changing, evolving as new things happen. The danger of adaptive organizations is that they have the opportunity to regress, right? A good example, I won't mention their name, but a very large management consulting organization, one of the top ones in the world, they were touted for a long time as being sort of like the poster child of collaboration in the enterprise. Everybody loved them. They had like 80% engagement levels. Employees were loving it. And then all of a sudden, everything plummeted, right? So they were an adaptive organization. They were incorporating feedback. They were rolling new things out. And then they went right back to being, I'd say, exploratory or defined. In that particular organization, what happened is they handed the project back off to their IT departments purely. They stopped incorporating employee feedback. It became a nightmare. Everyone stopped using the tools and platforms, so they regressed. I'm just kind of curious here. How many organizations here are unaware? Would you say are in the unaware phase? None? Great. What about exploratory? Still sort of doing some research, trying to see what's going on? Okay, couple. Defined. So you've really thought about this stuff. You have some things in place, strategies. Adoptive. How many organizations here are actually starting to roll these things out? Oh, awesome. Okay, so most of you. And adaptive. How many of you have already rolled this out and now you're starting to do a couple changes? Okay, great. So this is what the full maturity model actually looks like. And again, it starts at the very bottom with unaware organizations moving all the way to the top to adaptive. Now, what you'll notice, and this is what I started to notice over time, you see capabilities on the x-axis, business value. on the y-axis, there is what I believe to be a very big strategic value gap between where organizations are and where they can go. So in my opinion, unaware organizations have a very, very large strategic value gap. As you progress up that ladder, that gap starts to close a little bit, right? So I don't know if you can read in the back. So adaptive organizations, for example, under goals and objectives, those are the five key elements that I mentioned earlier. You can see that they have goals and objectives which are continuously evolved and adapted, processes continuously being adapted and changed, governance is in place. Exploratory organizations, if you look at those same variables, you see that they are still in the process of trying to understand and define what that actually looks like. Now, a lot of this came from, we did a big research project towards the end of last year where we surveyed 234 executives, practitioners, created a report. If anybody wants the report, by the way, just give me your business card, happy to email it to you. And it also came from a lot of conversations, discussions from organizations that we've worked with. And so far, I think it's a pretty good visual of looking at what collaboration or what maturity in the collaboration space can look like. And sort of tying that back, I think adaptive organizations, as you progress up, can really make the world a better place. And I mean, one of the things that I really want to encourage all of you here is, whether you go back to your organizations or attend other sessions, is not to just think about how collaboration impacts your employees while they're spending time with you at work, but what that employee's life actually looks like when they go home, right? Are they still thinking about work? Are they still stressed out? Are they still worried about all these things they need to get done? And so, I mean, I really believe that building these types of collaborative organizations is not only going to improve the enterprise, but I think it's also going to improve the quality of life for a lot of employees that work at these companies. So I'll end there. If anybody has any questions, now would be a good time. The book is out end of June, beginning of July. If you go to the collaborativeorganization.com, you can enter your email. I'll notify you automatically when it comes out. Any questions, comments, etc., jacob@chessmediagroup.com. If there's anything I can do to help you, point you to any resources that you might need, anything at all, I try to help as much as I can. And @JacobM on Twitter if anybody wants to keep talking about this stuff. So that's it for me. Now I'll